Hello.
Yes, Mr. Ravi. Mr. Balraman is on. Ravi is our senior vice president, sir. You met
Yeah,
him, President Danforth.
Ravi, hi. I met you before, yeah.
Yes, yes.
He's the incoming president, right?
Incoming, yes, sir.
So Balraman, we missed you in the convention. We were looking forward to you. You gave all the fantastic ideas and we missed you.
I couldn't be here. I was in Bangalore, so.
Looks
You were
like
the
you're
chairman
in
of the
Bali.
conventions.
Looks like you're in Bali now.
Yes.
Yeah, this is called Maya or illusion.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Doing well. I mean, see, I have become some kind of an expert in washing dishes and cutting vegetables.
I hope Mrs. Balram is listening to that actually to confirm that. I'm quite sure you won't do that. I know about.
No, she seeks a lot of improvement in what I do.
Oh, the quality of work has really improved.
Yeah. I mean, I still don't skin the vegetables enough before I cut. So
good evening, Tiger. Welcome. So good to see you, sir. Mr. Tiger Tagaran has joined us. Mr. Balraman and Nandu is already there.
Group Captain, so good to meet you.
Hi, Tiger. Good to see you. Hi.
So many years, my God.
Yeah, so many years. Yes.
So good to see you.
You're looking the same except for a change in your color of hair. Yeah, that's right. A lot of wisdom there.
Yeah, right.
What time is it, Tiger?
It is going to become 8:30.
8:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it's perfect. Wonderful time.
Yeah, suits you well. Yeah.
I just had my filter coffee and I'm all ready.
It was not Nestlé, was it?
No. I make filter coffee. I'm actually alone. Funnily enough, I'm alone at home in New York because my wife, when she was traveling to India, got stuck there in the lockdown there. So I'm locked down here. She's locked down there.
Where in Delhi?
Oh, okay.
In Delhi, yeah.
Oh, she's in Delhi. Oh, okay.
Now the flights have started. Actually, I'm able to manage to get the bookings, sir. There's quite a bit of demand for the tickets.
Yeah, so she's not in a hurry because she doesn't want to be one of the first people to rush into a flight.
Oh, I know. It's quite a bit of a lot of our friends.
But commercial flights haven't yet started.
Commercial flight, that chartered flight by Air India has started.
Yeah, those have started, correct.
But Tiger, from Chennai, the American consulate arranged a special Air India flight and called a lot of American citizens and green card holders from here with 3 hours notice, and they flew them in.
Yeah, so Mr. Balraman, interestingly, I'm not an American citizen or a permanent resident. I've lived here for 17 years, but only on a visa because my son, we have one son. My son basically has told both of us that if we ever become permanent residents or American citizens, he'll disown us. So
you can't do that. No? Okay.
Balraman will start now. Is it okay?
Yeah, we can start. Yeah.
I think you still have some people in the waiting list, so you can admit them as they come.
Yes. They will think because that's why I
will check this, you don't worry.
Yes. Quicker clear பண்ணுங்க பாதி காமிக்கும் ना Shankar.
Yeah. Now cleared.
Yeah.
40 people is there.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, very warm welcome to another edition of MMA event, which we have been bringing to you live since the time lockdown was in 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we are whatever is happening to open up the lockdown, we continue to provide you with some outstanding programs, and we are indeed so delighted to bring you this program live to you because over the period in the last 2 months, we had almost 68,000 viewers watch our program live in the last 2 months. As against last year, all our program, which we have been doing it at MMA House and different places, had only some 72 or 1,000 viewers. So that shows the power of reach over the social medium and also the power of MMA programs, high quality program which we are bringing to you. You are the adrenaline which pumps us to bring you some high quality programs. And another excellent event this evening, leadership and the purpose in turbulent times. One of the outstanding speakers, they're all walked miles into the team, and Mr. Nandkishore. Before I call upon and also introduce Mr. Balraman, who is the pioneer, who is a pillar, who is an advisor, who is a well-wisher, who is one of the finest fast players. I'll introduce him a little later. due to his personal interest, we have been able to put together some lovely thing where Mr. Ravi will share with you just a while ago. Before that, I'll tell you what's happening in MMA. By any chance you missed your inbox, as usual, we are bringing you some so many events. Sometimes you may miss your inbox, so that you don't watch some of the best events which you should be watching otherwise. Like on the 10th of thing, we have effective teamwork by Mr. Manu Vora. Manu Vora is Chairman President of Business Excellence from USA. This is happening at 9 o'clock in the morning. He is from US, from Chicago. He's going to be talking to us on the 12th of Friday at 11 a.m. Please note the timing. It's 11 a.m. Grow spiritually to be a better manager. We got Swami Muktananda. Swami Muktananda is the founder of Dadguru Kripala Yoga, Dallas, USA. He is an IIM Ahmedabad and also is also IIT Madras graduate, and he is one thing written regular articles and author TEDx speaker. He is now talking from Orissa. That's why we kept the event at 11 o'clock for better connectivity. Then on the 13th, we have Let Us Speak masterclass where Tiger Tyagarajan is going to be talking to us, and what is high performance culture and how do you drive it as a leader in these times of rapid changes. Same time next week, next Saturday, Tiger Tyagarajan is going to join us from New York and going to be talking to us on this another important subject. Then on 20th, we have survival and recovery from a pandemic through Industry 4.0. Again, it's a Ponds Leaders Speak series, Fragrance of Business. Mr. Chandramouli, former managing director, Hecate Machine Tools Private Limited, will be talking to us. Then on the Wednesday, the 24th, Manu Vora, Chairman, President, will be talking to us on leadership and excellence. We have another unique program which we designed you, which we will share with you earlier. We have a talk on the 23rd evening at 6 o'clock. Parliamentary democracy in COVID times. But why we brought in is actually most of the parliament around the world is working. Parliament has got a duty to really do it, and under the present circumstances, we expect the elected representative of Indian democracy, the largest democracy, to come together and take stock of what's happening and what should be doing that. But at the moment, it's not happening. There are a lot of discussions are happening. So we got some outstanding speakers. Mr. Madhavan is a peer of research who does quite a bit of research on parliamentary work, and he's going to be talking to us. We have got Mr. G. Ramesh, he's a professor in political science from IIM Bangalore. Then we also invited 2 members of parliament, confirmations awaited. So these are some of the topics we have to. We also have another event which is fixed on the 27th of Saturday, financial planning and management in COVID times by Mr. Prasad, former CEO of CAMS. Again, it's under Ponds Veteran Leaders Speak series. So these are what's happening till the thing, and there are much more. We also finalized many programs for the month of July. I'll keep in touch with you today. We are all, awaiting to already some 60 participants joined in. There's so many in the queue. Leaders Speak series by Ponds Veterans, Leadership and Purpose in Turbulent Time. To deliver the welcome address, I'll now welcome Mr. Ravi Chandran. He's a Senior Vice President MMA, President Indian Region, Danfoss Industry Limited. Ravi is also an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. He's been a great supporter of MMA. May I request Mr. Ravi Purushottam to please deliver the formal welcome address. Over to Ravi.
Thank you, Group Captain. It's indeed my privilege to deliver this formal welcome address this evening. Under this MMA's new initiative, Ponds veterans are organizing this leadership speak under the title Fragrance for Business. I'm also delighted to be part of this inaugural lecture. I think leadership and purpose in turbulent times has been captioned as the title for this series. And our sincere thanks to Mr. Balraman. He's been a great supporter of MMA, past president of MMA, and he's been a great mentor also to MMA in a long period of time actually. And he's been the one who's been conceptualizing and identifying the outstanding speakers to this unique series. I consider this as an honor and privilege to welcome this evening Mr. V. Balraman, past president and former MD Ponds India, Professor Nandkishore from Indian School of Business, guest lecturer at LSB, former EVP and head of Asia, Africa, Oceania, Nestlé, Switzerland. I also take this opportunity to welcome, Ponds veterans who are on this call this evening. The members of MMA, I can also see a lot of past presidents on the call, and also members of MMA from all over Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry, and a large number of participants who are joining via Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, and MMA webinar. As many of you may be aware, MMA is the largest management association in the country and has been adjudged the best management association in the country for over a decade now. And this has been possible because of the great secretariat, led by Group Captain Vijay Kumar, who's doing a stellar job, and he's actually a role model for leadership in times of COVID. I mean, the way he has reinvented himself and reinvented MMA's programs, it's pretty remarkable. I'm also happy to acknowledge that MMA has been successful throughout this lockdown period. And I think we've been arranging a number of online programs for different self-interest groups across the spectrum of the MMA membership. Coming to this evening's talk on the theme leadership and purpose in turbulent times, I think it's pretty apt and contextually a very important topic given the state of the economy, state of the world trade, and also state of the global economy. I think India has been under lockdown since March 25th. And I think for a longer period of time, we have been actually flattening, the curve basically to protect lives. And now we are kind of unlocking 1.0 has been initiated by the government, where we are looking at, restarting livelihood. And of course, there's been quite a bit of challenges, both on the economy side and also in the restarting of the economy. I think under these circumstances, I think the topic we have chosen, in my view, is extremely relevant. I think leadership plays a very vital role in instilling confidence, across different spectrum of the stakeholders. Be it the government, the public enterprises, the private sector, the pressure to demonstrate leadership qualities is pretty enormous on those who are occupying, the leadership position right now. I think the leaders are also expected to lead by example and exhibit the most important traits of a leader: compassion, empathy, hope, trust, relationship, and they all need to be nurtured. And in a kind of a pandemic situation as we've been going through now, I think a healthy company enjoys not only strong financials but also a culture, value, purpose, and I think that's also what reflects in many of the brands of the companies as well. And I think several CEOs chose to highlight how a strong culture has helped in hard times and how important is leadership. It's not to sacrifice that culture when a company comes under pressure. So in my view, leadership teams need to really remain looking forward despite the pressures that we have across the different parts of the business challenges. So I think in this context, I think we are eagerly looking forward to the address by Mr. Nandkishore on the theme leadership and purpose in turbulent times, which is, in my view, an extremely relevant and appropriate topic for this evening. So I would like to once again welcome all the viewers on the call this evening, and please enjoy this great webinar series. I will hand it back to Group Captain.
Thank you, Ravi, for delivering a welcome address and your words, kind words. It's indeed my proud privilege to introduce Mr. Balraman. I think Balraman really doesn't need introduction to this August gathering, the people who have joined us. Personally, for me, he's a great mentor. He's an advisor. In fact, as far as the MMA is concerned, he's the one who reinvented MMA when he took over as the president of MMA. And he's the one person in modern MMA times served the president as 2 years consecutively. And he's the one who transformed the MMA to look up to so many management things. And today, what MMA is, the foundation, what he laid during his president period. And he's also one who closely connected with us to bring this Ponds veteran together so that MMA members and the large number of viewers are greatly benefited by the exposure to some of the outstanding thought leaders around the world. Let me have the privilege of introducing Mr. Balraman. Mr. Balraman, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, former director of Hindustan Lever and MD of Ponds with a stint in Polaris Group under about management development, was also a energetic president, as mentioned earlier, 2 years in a row during the tenure, and speaker at several management seminars and conferences devoted to human development, created the branded HR software companies, a part of Polaris when he was there, and currently is also chairman director of number of companies, including board of directors of Nokia earlier, Mahindra Group, Lucas TVS Group, Polaris Group, and the STFC Group, and investments and much more. Enjoys coaching, mentoring leaders, helping build brands, consults on marketing through broad boardroom advantage, a mission to inspire leadership development, and is always inspiring to speak to him. Every time I speak to him, I get new ideas which I have been able to put in place. A very warm welcome to you, Balraman. Thank you for all the help which you have been giving it us over the time. And over to you, Mr. Balraman, to chair the session, introduce the speaker, and take forward the discussion this evening. Over to you, Mr. Balraman.
Thank you, Ravi, for that excellent starting remarks, inaugural remarks. And Group Captain, thank you for allowing us to do this program under your energetic, dynamic stewardship. It has long been my dream that Madras Management Association will become a global management association. And COVID has made that possible, ironically, with Zoom and YouTube and Facebook. We can now source speakers from anywhere around the world to audiences around the world as well. So our dream is beginning to bear fruit, Group Captain. Why are we doing this program? What is the purpose? Who will benefit and how? Pons India Limited was a small company, and starting in the decade of the 40s, and until it was merged with Hindustan Lever Limited in the year 1998. In the 60s, 70s, and even the 80s, the company faced an enormous adverse governmental atmosphere, because in the views of the governments then, cosmetics were a non-essential business for India. And they were not very happy with an MNC like Chesebro Pons operating in India, making profits and repatriating it. So the government's reaction was to levy an excise duty of 120% on our finished products, and an income tax rate of 70% on what they call super profits. And government also imposed an export obligation. These are formidable challenges for a small company with a very small management team. So what do people do when faced with inordinate challenges like this? The only resource they can fall back upon is the human resource, and this company did. And how? And that is what makes this story. Pons India attracted the very best talent from the premier institutes of management in India by offering the very best pay package. The pay package was not merely for monetary compensation. It was to reassure the top rankers of their personal self-worth. That was not all. The company also offered them an atmosphere of value systems. The company was very, very clear that character and competence come ahead of character and culture come ahead of competence. The company viewed competence without character and culture as not worth having. The company also offered huge challenges, formidable challenges to the teams that joined, to build a very strong cosmetics market in the face of adversarial tax regime, to open high quality export markets for new industries, newly opened companies in India, were both challenges that even experienced professionals would find daunting. But the company trusted very young, inexperienced managers with this. Not only did it trust them to do it, it allowed them to find their own way, form their own strategies, and failure was not a problem. You were allowed to fail. You can always try again. And while every other company believed in control systems, tight budgets, resource constraints, strictly authorized expenditure, and very tight meeting of goals, in Pons India, we chose to trust people. We trusted people. The confidence imposed in young minds gave enormous results. George Bernard Shaw's Eliza Doolittle would come to mind. The Pygmalion effect is true. We found it to be true. The theory of expectation, what they call it in psychology, if you expect people to perform to their very best, they always invariably do, is our experience. They did. And that is the reason we are here today. We are here to share our learnings and experience with you all. And over a period of the next several months, I hope to field the young, bright minds of Pons who made not only Pons what it is today, but they went out and made several other companies very large and powerful. They lived their dreams out there. And one of our best people is here today, Nandkishore. I'm very proud to introduce him to you. His formal introduction has been made by the group captain in the pamphlet that he distributed. And he himself is going to formally introduce you. What I'm going to tell you is that his formal introduction does not do justice to him. He is all that, but he is a lot more. Nandu is a lot more. Nandu beats definition. My most challenging task is to define him. I'm not going to attempt it. I'm going to give you hints. You know what he did? He joined Pons in the year 1983. In 18 short months, he resigned from a very, very high-paying job and put his only asset of a bike on a train to Delhi and followed the bike to Delhi. You know for what? To meet and marry his wife, Indu Mahajan. She was his classmate in IIM Ahmedabad. And that tells you that Nandu knew what value is. What is the definition of value? He knew it. And she bore him two lovely young sons, and he will tell you about them. Now, Nandu has also done other things that will startle you. People tell me that Nandu went to Antarctic and took a dip in ice cold waters. Yeah. And that's not the only thing. You know what he did? He also went to the Himalayas and hiked the mountains. Now, one of Nandu's favorite sayings nowadays is, if you harm any individual, you are harming society. And the classiest one is this. He says, I think success is given to us to test us. Now, as you can see, Nandu is like the Antarctic Sea that he dived into. I can't find his depth. I am collaborating with him as it is more and more interesting to find how deep he is. And here is Nandu to you.
Thank you, Mr. Balraman. Thank you, everybody, for introducing, and thank you, Group Captain, for putting this together. And once again, thank you for putting this whole series of talks together, Mr. Balraman, because I'm very pleased to be able to, be one of the several speakers in this stellar lineup. As you suggested, let me start by very quickly introducing myself. You can hear me and see me, no?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's okay. All right. So firstly, very quickly, the session, I'm going to speak for about 40-45 minutes from now, and then we'll open up the last half an hour for questions and more of a discussion first. Second, this is not structured as a teaching session. Rather, it's structured as a learning session, because I'm pretty sure we'll both gain a lot by the interaction that we will have. Third, now having said those two things and gotten out of the way, third thing on the mechanics, I will use some PowerPoint slides. I'll talk to you like this on video, and I'll show you some videos as well, some ads and stuff. So hopefully between the three, I'll keep you entertained so you don't fall asleep for the next 45 minutes. To introduce myself, I'm 62 years of age. I am a graduate from IIT Delhi in 1980 and an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad in 1982, which is where indeed I met my wife, Indu. Having graduated from IIT and IIM, I then joined Pons, which is where a lot of my early exposure to business and the formative years I started to understand leadership and culture. I have a huge debt of gratitude to our guru, Mr. V. Narayanan, and Mr. Balraman, and several others. Some of you are in the audience today. It was a wonderful culture. There was a lot of trust. There was values-based leadership. There was a nice balance between people, integrity, and on competence and results. And I struggled to find a nice way to describe it. So finally, I turned to the Tao Te Ching. And the Tao Te Ching, this book here, has a very nice quotation, which I think has inspired me and reminds me of ponds, not to any individual there, but to the collective culture. It says, when the master governs, when the master leads, the people are hardly aware that he exists. Next best is a leader who is loved. Next, one who is feared. The worst is one who is despised. If you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. You remember what Mr. Balaraman just said? When the master doesn't talk, he acts. When his work is done, the people say, amazing, we did it all ourselves. That was Ponds. That was Ponds, a fabulous culture. I grew up in that culture, and yeah, it's a very romantic story that you described, my motorcycle and me. Anyway, I worked for Godrej for 5 years, and I worked with Nestlé for almost 30 years all over the world. At different times, I was the CEO for Nestlé in Indonesia, the CEO in the Philippines, the global CEO for Nestlé Nutrition. And then I was the CEO for Asia, Oceania, and Africa. And then I retired from Nestlé. After retiring, I now teach at the London Business School and at the Indian School of Business, where I'm a professor. I'm a small venture capitalist. I'm on a few company boards. I do some consulting, and I'm a very fond grandfather. Our elder son is a professor of physics at Boulder, Colorado. Younger son is working with Facebook in London. I'm a fitness enthusiast, and if you ever want to do a 10-kilometer run, just give me a shot. I would love to join you. So let's get started with the session. And I'm going to start by sharing my screen and throwing a few questions at you. So let me start off with this. Now, so I came across this chart a couple of years ago. And this is a chart made by Standard & Poor's, and it's a chart of the average lifespan of the 500 biggest companies in the world. This is the S&P 500, the 500 biggest companies in the world. And in fact, if you extend the chart towards the left to 1920, the expected life of a company in 1920 was 90 years. Since then, throughout the 20th century, it has come down steadily, and this decline has accelerated again in this century. So today we're talking of an expected lifespan of companies of about 15 years. So what's going on? Is this even real? Is this even happening? So what's going on? The first thing to ask whenever somebody throws a chart like this at you is this true? Are these real facts on Fox News, or are they fake facts coming from CNN? We need to understand what's the reality here. And indeed, if you look at it today, you look at the top 10 companies worldwide, and you look at the so-called FANG companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, something like 7 to 8 of the top 10 biggest companies in the world today are tech companies that did not exist 30 years ago. Something is happening. You all grew up with the image of the world's inventor of photography, Kodak. Yeah, for 130 years, they dominated the specialty chemicals and photography industry. Remember the Kodak moment? Where is Kodak today? And remember, Kodak was the one who invented the digital camera, and they disappeared. They actually set up a separate division to focus on digital photography in 1991. In 1998, they closed down the division, focused on their core competence, which was paper-based photographs, and said, we will not let Fujifilm compete with us. They cut costs, they slashed costs and prices, and 10 years later, they were gone. What's basically happening is that the speed of change in technology, the speed of technological change throughout the 20th century has been accelerating steadily. Now, I'm going to round off some dates to prove a point, just to make a point. So please don't be very specific on my dates. But arguably, the 20th century has seen more technological change than the 50,000 years of human history before that. So before that, you had agriculture, wheel, and the development of the wheel and livestock, etc., as the biggest human inventions. Suddenly in the 20th century, you had communication, you had telephones, you had radio, you had television, you had fax machines, you had motorcycles, you had trains, you had cars, you had rocket ships, and all of a sudden the world became a much smaller place than it was earlier. And this rate of change has accelerated throughout the 20th century. Coming into this century, the first 20 years of this century have seen even greater technological change than the 100 years of the last century. Today, we cannot imagine life without internet, without Zoom calls, without Facebook, social media, and without our smartphones. Can we? I bet all of you here have smartphones. And if I were to ask you, this can't be an interactive session because of the way it is set up. But if I were to ask you, how many of you actually go to bed with your smartphone and wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is you turn to your smartphone and you say, my precious, and then you turn to the darling on the other side, did you sleep well, darling? Yes or no? You know, this is millennia long behavior. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. This is, you know, worldwide, something like 88% of people go to bed with their smartphones. Now, and this is a behavioral change that's happened now in the last 10 years because smartphones didn't exist about 10, 12 years ago. So phones, it's very interesting. In 1998, there was one company that had a global market leadership of mobile phones. This was the analog technology mobile phones. Each mobile phone was about that big. And they had more than a 50% global market share. Do you know which company that was?
Motorola.
Thank you, Mr. Balraman. That's the right answer. A lot of people normally say Nokia. Motorola was the world's #1 mobile telephone company. In 1 year, the technology changed from analog to digital. Motorola retooled and changed their technology, but it took them 12 months to do it. And I give them full credit for the courage in actually retooling their factories to junk the analog and go to digital tech. But in those 12 months, a new company came. And until today, in their home market, the brand name Nokia means rubber boots. So their core competency was how to make rubber boots. And they took this new technology, they leveraged it, they became world #1. How long did Nokia's leadership last? Less than 10 years. And then they lost it, whether they lost it to Samsung or to Apple or to Android. It's a different debate and a different question. Interestingly, Nokia were the ones who invented the smartphone. So what exactly is going on? And basically, what's happening is if you go to the world of natural history, what we learn from the world of natural history is this, that at times of great change, it is not the strongest or most intelligent who survive. It is the ones who are most adaptable to change. I repeat this. This is very important for us in business. It is not the strongest or most intelligent to survive. The ones who survive are the ones who are most adaptable to change. What this basically means, the key lesson for us in business today is change or die, disrupt or be disrupted. And this therefore means that it is the fundamental task of leadership to prepare the organization for change. Yeah. When I started working in 1980, people used to say, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Today, the mantra is different. If it ain't broken, you better find a way to break it and do better, or else somebody else out there is going to do it for you. The only question is, are you going to be able to change fast enough? At the same time, it is a fundamental leadership task to know what not to change. And now you will say, Array, this Nandu is totally confused. On the one hand, he says change. Now he says, don't change, make up your mind. So it's a very good question. I'm going to build on this a little bit because what not to change is your North Star, your reason for existence, your purpose, your values. Everything else must be up for change to improve the value delivery, the value you create for the entire ecosystem, starting with your customers, consumers, employees, suppliers, business partners, right across the value chain. So coming now to this COVID crisis, turbulence is definitely part of the new normal, and you are going to encounter this far more in your lives than I did in mine, because the rate of change is accelerating as we're going forward, whether it's technology, whether it's economy, whether it's the global trade environment, or COVID. COVID is just the latest. So one very quick poll: are you concerned about this current COVID crisis and worried about the lack of control that you have on events? And I'm going to ask to run a very quick poll with everybody. And maybe I can ask everybody to mute their mics, so because there's some echo coming in my earphones.
Shankar, will you please mute everybody?
Thank you.
Yes, I will take it, sir.
Yeah, so I think this is enough time for the poll. So you have to just answer and click submit. So let's close the poll and let's see what the answers are. Right, so most of you feel that there's so much turbulence happening, you can't control it anyway. So, you know, what do I do? And it's a very real question. It's a very real question, which I'd like to discuss a little bit on the next few charts. So what we are saying, basically, there are several questions on our minds. How long is this turbulence going to last? I answered that question. Turbulence is a part of the new normal. How long is this COVID crisis going to last? We don't have a clue. Yeah. And what control do I have? What actions can I take? And are there things I should not change, like I said a little while ago? On a lighter note, you might choose to use the COVID crisis to, you know, that person you really didn't want to meet, that boyfriend or girlfriend you didn't want to meet, and you can now say, yeah, you know, I would love to meet you, but, you know, social distancing, let's, you know, stay away. That was a joke, by the way. So how long is this crisis going to last? The crisis, we don't know. Yeah, what we do know is we can build scenarios. It might go away in 3 months. There might be a vaccine in 6 months, or it might take a year to build this vaccine. It's possibly going to be a year away. What we can do is build scenarios and plan for each of these scenarios, because a lot of the underlying changes with turbulence are actually going to accelerate in the course of this COVID-19. This is a transition event in our history, which people will talk about for the next 100 years. For sure, there will be winners and losers. We see already almost every category that you are consuming in home, which is on the chart, the stuff to your right, whether it's hygiene products, whether it's food products, whether it's entertainment products or network-based products or bandwidth, or indeed medical supply at home. These sectors are actually booming, and these companies are actually struggling to keep up with demand. On the other hand, almost anything that is consumed out of home, travel has dropped by 95%. Singapore Airlines, Lufthansa has asked for a $10 billion bailout. Several other industries, Hertz has announced bankruptcy. So automobiles, hotels, JW Marriott has laid off 70% of their staff. So there are winners and losers happening even within this crisis. Some of which have accelerated trends happening earlier, some of which have reversed the trends happening earlier. So how do you deal with all of this? So just one very quick video on how some small businesses adapted. And this is from Australia.
We have had to close all our restaurants for obvious reasons, for the coronavirus. So I thought to myself, hey, I know all my friends have got these import companies and they can get pasta and I can get sauces and I get all this stuff. And I converted this beautiful restaurant, which is really a beautiful restaurant, into a grocery store. Basically stock, quality and desire for people to come here and buy it, and to really invigorate the neighbours to say, right, they don't have to travel far to get really good quality food. We have to make the best of what we have, and what we can do is we can innovate, change, work with what we have and try and create something. That's the only thing we can do. Adapt. Work with what you have. Try and provide a service to your neighbours. Whatever space we have to just do whatever it takes to get them back to spend with us in different ways, I suppose. And that's all that we can do. So far, so good. And we've been able to maintain our staff.
So obviously, first, let me just pause here a bit and talk about the video for a minute. So this is one small business from Australia, how they adapted. And all that we spoke about Charles Darwin, change or die. So their key focus from a values point of view, quality, employees, local customers, cater to them, and they stayed focused on that. They've changed their business model, they pivoted. What's the key message? Adapt, adapt, adapt. Remember our first key learning, change or die. Okay, I'm going to talk about a few other stories coming from my personal life to illustrate some other crises of similar nature, major economic crisis that I have personally come across and faced. So, yeah. So when a crisis happens, sorry, can you mute everybody's mics, please? Some echoes coming. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for muting your mics. So when a crisis comes, you can...
So just a second, sir. Just a second.
Yeah, thank you. So when a crisis happens, you can be like an ostrich. You can stick your head in the sand, or you can collectively, everybody stick their head in the sand. That's one valid way of not doing anything. But equally, there are other step-by-step rules that you can follow. There are 5 rules. I will not spend time on all 5. I'm just going to quickly scroll through the first 4, recognize the crisis, get a crisis team in place, appoint a devil's advocate, and understand what is fact and what is opinion. Because in any crisis, any fog of war, there will always be opinions floating around. And you need to separate what is fact, what do I know, what do I not know, and what is an opinion. All 3 have a role to play at different times. Put in place a process to collect the facts on what you don't have, but focus on what you do have and the opinions on what you need to do about the facts that you do have. Most important, remind yourself and your core teams, what are the core purposes and values that you will not compromise while you're making the short-term shifts? What are the core strengths you have that you can leverage and not throw away in the process of adapting and changing your business model to continue to stay relevant to all your stakeholders, from consumers, customers, to employees, to suppliers and business partners? So along this line, remember the question I asked you on control. One very simple way to look at this: focus on what you can control and scenario plan for what you cannot control. There are always going to be things out of your control. Focus on what you can control, right? When it comes to actions, fundamentally, human beings, whenever any threat comes, there are only 2 actions possible. One, actually, there is a third one, which is the ostrich reaction, which is just stick your head in the sand and ignore it. That happens too. But the first action is one that treats the crisis as a threat. And the second one is a response that treats the crisis as an opportunity. So which of these is actually better? What do you think? Which of these is a better way to cope with the crisis? Is it the threat response? Is it the opportunity response? And the jury is split. Many of you will say it's the threat response. Many of you will say it's the opportunity response. I bring you a word from Chinese. It's Wei Qi. And Wei Qi is a Chinese word for crisis. It has two symbols. The first symbol means danger. The second symbol means opportunity. So the strategic insight for action is this, which is a successful response to a crisis has to view the crisis as a threat and as an opportunity at the same time. So unlike Kodak, who basically closed down the digital division and focused on cutting costs, so they viewed digital photography as a threat because there was no way to make money, Fujifilm said, you know what, we're going to do exactly what Kodak did. We're going to cut costs, make sure we focus on our paper printing business for photographs. But the money that we make, the costs that we save, we don't give it back to shareholders. We use it to see how we can take the strengths we have in R&D and leverage them. So today, Fujifilm is a leader in digital imaging, in thin film technology, and in photographs. Fujifilm is a successful $20 billion global multinational. Kodak doesn't exist. So a successful response to a crisis, whether it's a fundamental technological crisis or an economic crisis or a COVID crisis, has to view the disruption as a threat and as an opportunity. How does this apply to you? Threat response, cut costs, make sure you stay viable.
We are not able to hear.
Nandu sir, what happened? Your audio is not coming.
Let's check your audio, Mr. Nandkishore.
There's no audio from Nandu.
Nandu sir, are you there?
Mr. Ravi, சொல்லுங்க. Check பண்றேன், ரீஎன்ட்ரி பண்ணனும். பண்ண சொல்றேன்.
Captain sir, it's possible or call பண்றீங்களா? அவர் இது இல்ல.
அவர் டிராப் ஆயிடுச்சு நினைக்கிறேன்ல. We'll have to re-enter.
Drop ஆகல, வேற ஏதாவது இஷ்யூ இருக்கு. கொஞ்சம் கால் பண்ணி பேசுங்க.
Internet gone, is it?
No sir, internet is there. அவர் தான் ஃப்ரீஸ் ஆயிருக்காரு.
லாகின் பண்ணி வர சொல்றோம் திருப்பியும்.
கால் பண்ணி வர சொல்லுங்க, என்ன ப்ராப்ளம் கேளு.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, sir. He's just coming back. He lost on internet. He's just coming back.
Okay.
Let's wait for him actually.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 minutes.
Sir, your audio is muted. Nandu sir, audio is muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, perfect. Sir.
Okay, my apologies. This is our internet fluctuates. So good thing I was able to come back. So I was talking about how this applies to you. And I was talking about a very specific example I was using. Sorry, you have to make me the host once again so I can share my screen.
Shankar, make this other person, second mail ID host, please. Done it? Shankar?
Yeah, it's done. Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's done, sir.
It's done. So to continue, I'll talk about in Indonesia in 1998, the ASEAN financial crisis. I was there at the time for various reasons. There was an economic crisis. Within 6 months, the exchange rate went from 2,000 rupiah to $1. It went all the way to 17,000 rupiah to the dollar. Imagine if today the Indian rupee is 70 rupees to $1. Imagine if it goes all the way to 700 rupees to $1 in 6 months. That's what happened in Indonesia at that point of time. An entire segment of the population went from middle class into poverty. It was tragic. A lot of companies chose to leave the country and stop operations. A lot of other companies laid off people. They traded down their products, cut quality, etc. In Nestlé at the time, we had to work very hard to keep our supply chains up and running. At the same time, we had to demonstrate our commitment to our core values. We did not lay off a single person. We kept investing in our people. We kept investing in product quality, and we made sure our consumers got good quality products. This meant we were taking price increases every 2 weeks. It meant we were giving salary increases to our people every 2 weeks to help them cope with inflation. It also meant that in that first year, our business in actual volume terms declined by 30%. But we stayed, we built our brand, we did the right things with our farmers who supplied us milk, all the way to consumers who consumed the milk products that we created. And the entire value chain rewarded us handsomely, because starting the following year, the business just went like that. And today it's $1.5 billion business in Indonesia for Nestlé. Okay, at that time, it had dropped down to about $200 million. It's really bounced back in the time since then.
And so, sir, sorry to disturb you. Your screen sharing is not working. We are not viewing in a PowerPoint presentation. Can I do the PowerPoint presentation?
Is it? Can you see me now?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. If I share the screen now, can you see the screen now?
Yeah, please. I will do that, sir. Just a second, sir.
No, actually, you cannot, because I have to play some video. So this is very important.
Fine. Please do that, sir.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, right now.
Okay, wonderful. So let me move quickly. Fast forward a few years. I was the global head of Nestlé Nutrition, and we had these little jars of apple puree that we were selling, baby products, in France. And they were glass jars, and we discovered in the factory that there was some broken glass on the line. So we very quickly got a team together. We went in and we figured out that this glass could only have come from 2 batches. So we tried to isolate those 2 batches. What we discovered was some of those batches had already gone through to the trade. So we very quickly alerted the authorities and the customers, and together with them, we were able to retrieve these glass jars. Nobody got hurt, but we had to go public with our recall. So everybody, it was public, and the consumers responded very positively. It was very good reaction. It was positively appreciated by everybody. The next thing you know, because social media was already here by the year 2009, and this started to go viral everywhere. And suddenly you had consumers in Spain, consumers in Italy who were saying, is Nestlé the product? Do we have to return our baby jars? What's the problem? So we had to reassure all of them. Then a few days later, and this was Friday evening at 8:30. Now, one of the golden rules about product crisis or emergency crisis is this, which is the big crisis always happen after 6:30 p.m. on a Friday evening before a long weekend. Call this Nandu's Law. As it happened, 8:30 in the evening, I was still in the office. Don't ask me what I was doing there. Bad habits. Don't follow that. But I was in office, and I get a phone call from our social media unit. It said there's this lady called Alyssa Milano. She's a Hollywood star, and she has 17 million followers. And she has tweeted that in the US, Nestlé is called Gerber, and Nestlé is recalling baby food. So please return your Gerber baby jars to Nestlé. That's a $2 billion business in the US, right? And for no reason to create a panic of that sort. So we had to respond immediately. I responded to her on Twitter immediately within 5 minutes with our correct position. And she was so gracious that immediately she tweeted a retraction, said, no, the US products are okay. It's only in France, and that problem is over and it's closed. So what's important here is this was very much in the nature of the threat response. Stop the bleeding, address the vulnerabilities, and make sure you protect your values, protect your people, and most importantly, your consumers, and in this case, the babies and the mothers. Act decisively. Speed is important. One very quick example from an opportunity response that happened a few years later. So fast forward one more year, and I was in Chennai. It was Christmas 2010. I was in Chennai just before Christmas at my mother's. And I get a phone call from Chile, and it was our country manager, Ximena Corbo, who was calling me. And Ximena said, listen, boss, we have a problem. And apparently there was a politician using a local lab to try to discredit the government and some multinationals, Nestlé included, in Chile. And he tested Nestlé products, baby products particularly, and he found they were completely compliant as per all local regulations, completely compliant. And he tested them against the US FDA, they were completely compliant. Then he tested them against the Codex norms, Codex Alimentarius, completely compliant. And they tested them against the EFSA, European Food Safety Agency norms, and he discovered that in our products, there were trace elements in parts per million permitted in Chilean law of a pesticide called iprodione, which in European law was completely banned. The tolerance level was 0. It was allowed in US FDA and Chile at certain parts per million. So now what do? Because he went to the government, and government basically said, Nestlé, your problem, you handle it. So they come to us and say, so Mr. Nestlé, are you telling us that European babies are more important than Chilean babies? Why do you have double standards? We don't. We just comply with the local laws and parameters everywhere. So we had to respond. And eventually, the product was perfectly okay, but we recalled these batches of apple puree for 6 months till we could reformulate and come back. And that's when we launched the very imaginatively called Project Saturday. And you can see my imagination at work, because I got a phone call on a Saturday evening from Chile. So this Project Saturday basically said, I don't care what the local regulation is. On each parameter, whether it's iprodione or zinc or everything, we have to be the strictest of the local, European, and US regulations. So that started with baby products, and slowly has now working its way through all the Nestlé products. But that's what we did. We still had to communicate. So that addressed the threat response in the short term to tell people, listen, our products are perfectly safe, but we understand your emotional concern. So we're taking it off the market. Then we worked with farmers. We bought out the entire farm. We told them what pesticides they could use. And then we relaunched the product. And here is a communication that we used at the time. It's in Spanish, but you can watch.
Agricultor de la octava región, y este es mi campo. El trabajo del campo es una mezcla entre pasión y profesionalismo. Hoy más que nunca podemos aprovechar las nuevas tecnologías para mejorar la eficiencia en la producción, ofreciendo así frutas y verduras 100% sanas y de la mejor calidad. Y es en este campo donde comienza el origen de los picados y colados Nestlé.
Colados y picados Nestlé, la mejor calidad del campo a cada frasco, reconocido por la Sociedad Chilena de Pediatría. Conoce más de esta historia en creciendojuntos.cl.
So that was the communication with which we came back to the market. And has screen share stopped now? Can you see me? Okay, and you can.
We'll bring you back to the screen, sir. Shankar, screen share, please.
Yeah. So that was the communication we used. And 1 year later, our market share was higher than ever before. Yeah, and our business was actually up because we used the crisis as an opportunity to completely invest in the supply chain, in the farmers, and then tell the story using farmers, using our individuals, our quality people, to actually build a quality story, but ultimately which consumers really appreciated. The problem historically is most managers look at quality as a cost. The moment you look at quality as a cost, you've lost the battle. When you can start to see quality as an opportunity and communicate that, consumers actually respond very, very positively. So that's a very quick summary of pre-crisis. I'm going to move on now to values and purpose. for about 10 minutes, and then I'll throw the floor open for Q&A. So start screen share once more. And here goes. Let me go to the PowerPoint. Okay. So yes, coming to values. So here's a question. What strategy do you think you should follow in the current crisis? There are 5 questions here. I'm going to stop screen share and ask to run this poll for everybody, so we see what they say.
So poll launched.
Yeah, thank you. There are multiple choices, so you can choose more than one response, but don't choose all 5. Okay, we give it another 10 seconds and then we stop the poll and put the summary, please. Yeah. Let's stop the poll now. Thank you. There you are. I love this response. 45% of you are saying it doesn't matter what happens as long as I stay true to my values. Fantastic. There are 33% who say, don't worry, do nothing, and the crisis will be over. That's a valid strategy. It's a valid strategy. It may well be right. Yeah, 18% who are saying somehow survive the crisis, focus on the threat response, and 41% who are saying look for an opportunity response. It's very, very interesting. I'm going to talk about values a little bit now and switch back to PowerPoint charts. Very quickly, some other crisis management rules. I don't spend time on this. I let you see all 10 rules for crisis management later on your own time. I'll give you some links to some other videos on crisis management that you can view. So here's what we are saying. What are the implications for us? And let me move. Think back to your last personal crisis that you faced before this one. It may have been a job crisis. It may have been a relationship crisis, may have been an economic crisis.
Shankar, I think
again internet broke. Either disconnect sir.
I talked to him.
Please.
He came on other line. Let me try. Please bear with us. His net dropped and he's joining back soon. Please bear with us for this inconvenience. In the meanwhile, Mr. Balraman would like to say something, share some of your views till he comes back again.
Balraman, you unmute yourself.
Yeah, you unmute yourself. Yes.
Yeah, very, very interesting that he talks about crises like this. Crisis is, if you stick to 4 values, that's also an opportunity to build high value to your brand. Johnson & Johnson had the same problem. There were 3 jars of Johnson & Johnson in which they found cyanide in United States of America. Johnson & Johnson, this was their brand of Tylenol. Johnson & Johnson pulled out all the stock.
Mr. Balraman has joined us now. Yeah, Mr. Nandu is back.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. The internet keeps going for some reason today. Yeah, let me do. Yeah, crisis on the fly, but don't give up. Keep going back. So the role of luck. When crisis happens, do we often say, she is so lucky, she was so unlucky? We say that, right? Now, very interesting thing about luck. Jim Collins did a study. on luck for companies, because it's easy to measure luck for companies. And what he basically found
Nandu sir, sorry to interrupt you. Your share screen is not working.
Yeah, it says I've started screen sharing. Why is this? Do I need to sign out and sign in again?
Not required, sir. You can just stop screen. Just a second, sir.
Yeah, can you stop this sharing bit if you can? Yeah, because I'm definitely not sharing anything right now.
Just a second, sir.
Yeah, nothing is being shared.
Yeah, nothing is being shared. I can keep talking. So listen, Jim, while he fixes this sharing, I can talk. Jim Collins measured this, and he wrote about this in his book, Great by Choice, and he measured it for companies. Now, for a company, it's easy to measure. If my factory burns down, it's bad luck for me. It's good luck for the competition. If my competitor's factory burns down, it's bad luck for him. It's good luck for me. And what he measured, very interesting, and both have to be reported in the annual report, so it's documented. Over a 20-year period, all companies have the same number of bad luck events and the same number of good luck events. So then he said, what makes some companies great and other companies just fall by the wayside? And he hypothesized that it is not the number of good luck events or bad luck events that you have, it is what you do. When the good luck event happened, did you have the reserves and the capacity to ride the wave and maximize the opportunity? When the bad luck event happened, did you have the reserves and capacity to recover quickly? That is what makes the difference. And when it comes to an individual level, unless you have really bad karma, in which case I can recommend a different strategy to you, which is this one. Unless you have really bad karma, chances are all our lives, we're going to have the same number of bad luck events and the same number of good luck events. So don't ask yourself and say, oh my God, I'm lucky, I'm bad luck. Ask, what can you do? So be prepared before the crisis happens. Be prepared for a bad luck event and a good luck event, and always look for a dual threat opportunity kind of a response. I'm going to share again my screen, and hopefully it works now. Is it working now?
Yes. Please try now, sir. Yes, it's now working, sir.
Okay, good. So, and one of the philosophical insights I have in my life is, I've had lots of failures in my life, lots of successes. And the startling insight I have is the roots of all my successes. The roots of all my successes are in my biggest failures and my biggest problems. So somehow I start at a philosophical level to start to believe that problems are actually coming to us as a gift, inviting us to respond with a balanced response that goes beyond the ostrich response, to then convert that problem into an opportunity and grow through the crisis. So that's a submission I'm offering to you, how to be personally resilient with a measured response that separates panic and fear and despair. What is your threat response? What is your opportunity response? Embrace the uncertainty, and you might find that when there are problems and everybody else is following an ostrich strategy or a panic or a threat strategy, you might be the only one who moves beyond, does the threat response and an opportunity response to actually grow through the crisis. Never waste a good crisis. Crisis is what makes the difference between how you respond to crisis, does make the difference between great companies and also ran companies. It's also true for individuals, right? So I don't go through this chart now. I leave this with you. You can read it later. This is a one-page summary of an article by my colleague Hermina Ibarra from London Business School in the Harvard Business Review about how to reinvent your career in disruptive times. It's self-explanatory. I don't spend time on it right now. So this crisis is going to be a watershed moment in our species history. When you make choices with any situation, ask yourself, what is my legacy going to be? 20 years later, when you're talking to your grandchildren, will you be proud of the choices that you have made today? I don't know how many of you have seen Lord of the Rings, but in Lord of the Rings, as they go through the mountains of Moria, and they can't turn back because there's that monster outside, but in front are the orcs. Frodo says, I wish that the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had ever happened. Like today, you can say, I wish the COVID crisis had not happened. And Gandalf's answer is classic. So do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All that we have is to decide what to do with the time that is given to us. So classic response. Let me just one last chart. I'm not going to go through this today. The links to various videos and crisis management are there. I am launching a YouTube channel called Insights with Nandu. The link is here. It is not yet populated with many videos, but over the next few weeks, I'll start to put videos on various topics onto it. So do follow there and have a look. And now I stop the broadcast and I open up to questions and answers.
Over to Mr. Balraman. You can ask your questions. In the meanwhile, I also collect the questions which has come from our YouTube and other viewers from webinar. In the meanwhile, I also request all the viewers watching this program on Zoom, please put your question in the chat box, and the speaker Nandu will be delighted to respond to your question. Over to you, Mr. Balraman. Then once you hand over to me for the questions back, I will get back to you again.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Okay. Nandu, just wanted to share. Yes, I see there is a lot in Indian philosophy about this. The Indian philosophy is that whatever is given to you by nature is indeed a gift. 3 years ago, I had a personal crisis. I was going to South Africa, and before that, I'm a diabetic, so I tested my blood sugar, and my HbA1c was 9.4.
Wow.
And I was on insulin, and my doctor said you have become insulin resistant. So he stopped insulin for me. Once he stopped insulin, I was in a crisis because there was I could eat nothing. I didn't have the medicine to balance my blood sugar. So I don't know what to do with, I don't know how to live. So I needed to find food that could go along. I discovered that we can digest fat through the liver. We can digest protein through the kidneys. And we needed the pancreas for carbohydrates. Of the three major nutrients, I couldn't handle one. So I switched over completely to the other two. And over a period of 3 years, gradually overcame my insulin resistance. And now I'm able to, I'm off all medicine. And
fantastic.
And I'm managing my body with fat, protein, and limited carbohydrates and a lot of workout. So it was a crisis, but I see it as an opportunity because it makes me focus on my health. So I don't have any other issue. No heart problem, no liver problem, no stomach problem. I have none. I'm very, very healthy because it's an opportunity. So a crisis is indeed a gift. This is
a crisis.
Indian philosophy.
Very insightful. Thank you, Mr. Balraman. Very useful, very insightful. And it's indeed what I was saying. Every problem comes bearing a gift for you.
It's the other side. Yeah, a problem or an opportunity is the other side of the same coin.
Exactly right.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir. In the way, Tiger, you are there. I could see. Would you like to ask a question before I move ahead with a lot of questions which has come from the viewers? Tiger, do you have any question for Mr. Nandu?
No. Go ahead with the other questions. I'll ask.
No, let's introduce Tiger. See, Tiger Tyagarajan is also another Pons Indian of whom I am very proud. I have several youngsters like that of whom I am proud, but these two are particularly so. And Tiger is going to speak to us next Saturday.
So there's a question on countries, leaders, and how to respond to uncertainties. There's a lot of debate out there about people who handled it well and people who didn't handle it well or apparently not. The thing is, for leaders also to take decisions, there are so many uncertainties. And partly it's compounded by the way your country is laid out. So if your country is a relatively less urbanized country, or the state is relatively less urbanized like Kerala, fighting the COVID response requires a different kind of strategy which works. But a more urbanized cluster like a New York or a London or a Mumbai or a Delhi requires a very different kind of an approach which works. I think leaders in all countries are searching for the right strategy to deal with the relatively less urbanized. I think we have, as a species, had more success across geographies. What I would like to focus on is not so much the COVID response strategies, but the leadership styles. What I have personally appreciated is a leadership style that recognizes the problem, that says, these are the facts, this is what I know, this is what we're going to do, this because of this reason, this is what I don't know. And I think the Prime Minister of Singapore was brilliant in this case, how he periodically came out very calm, very measured, saying, this is what I know, this is what we're going to do. If this happens, this is what we're going to do. And continuous communication of this sort is actually very reassuring when it's backed up with a lot of government action. This is actually a moment for leadership in the political side and the country side, but also at the corporate level. You see the way Airbnb and Uber have handled their layoffs, where the amount of heart with which they had to cut costs. See what happened to Hertz. But the amount of heart with which they did that, and they're preparing their people to come back and re-enter the workforce subsequently. Absolutely brilliant. The global chairman of JW Marriott, how he went out and spoke to all employees. There are bad examples too, to be fair. There are, Jenny Craig, famously, all the employees of Jenny Craig in the US were fired over a Zoom call. Yeah, that's not the way to do things. At the end of the day, this crisis is going to separate the great leaders from the ordinary or weak leaders. This is true at a corporate level, it's true at a societal level, it's true at a country level, and it's true for each of us at an individual level.
Group captain, we are not ready.
Yes.
Ask
Yes, we are ready, sir. In fact, he is also watching the same screen, and I got question from other sources which I'll read out. There's a question which has come from Vasudev and Seturaman. Leaders had so far been responding to uncertainties reasonably well, but post-COVID-19 looks to be uncertainties for so many uncertainties all at the same time. What are your suggestions for leaders to handle such a turmoil in uncertainties?
This is what I was just responding to. This was the question on the chat box, which I was responding to.
Yes.
And ultimately, it's linked, Sethuraman, to scenario planning. And you have to build various scenarios. And the one thing I cannot stress enough is communicate, communicate, communicate. Because people out there, if you don't communicate, there is a vacuum. And the vacuum will be filled by WhatsApp and by fake messages and all kinds of quack-based advice. To be fair, the leaders' jobs have not been made easy. I mean, see the scandal involving Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine, which have been forced to retract an article that was published based on false data. The whole information, you remember what I said about the fog of war, to know what is the fact, what is opinion, and what you don't know, very important, particularly today. So I have a lot of sympathy for the political leaders and the kind of decisions they have to make now. I have a lot of sympathy for them. I'm not going to sit here in judgment on them.
There's a question from a YouTube viewer, sir. He says, this is a pandemic which impacted the entire world, sir. Now, leadership around the world is, different leaders have reacted to different, even the country political system has reacted differently. And you have been a leader of Nestlé, different countries at different locations, different times. You mean your leadership style change every time you visit a different country, or you stick to the values of your company? And what is the people should now doing under these conditions?
Very, very good question. And, at the end of the day, there are a lot of cultural differences in every society, in the way people communicate and how direct you can be, how aggressive you can be. There are cultural differences in the how you communicate. But at the end of the day, there are some fundamentals that do not change. across cultures. The value of integrity does not change. The value of respect does not change. The value of trust does not change. So when you're able to demonstrate these values and communicate with people as genuine human beings with care for them in a way that's culturally appropriate in that context, then people do respond. I have sat and listened in focus group discussions. I have listened to, in these focus group discussions where you sit behind a mirror and you listen to people discussing. I have listened to mothers in Beijing. I have listened to mothers in Mexico, in Germany, in South Africa. And you know what? They use even the same words. They use the same words. They have the same views. At the end of the day, human beings are not so different. Our cultural overlays are there, but the underlying values are very similar. And that's why it's what is very important when you're going across cultures and leading across cultures. Know what are your values, know what are your company's values, ensure the two are in sync and they are not working against. If your values are not in sync with your company's values, exit, go somewhere else where they are in sync. Yeah, but stay true to those values, because those values are what are going to hold you in good stead. And as long as you're holding true to those values, and even if you slip up in the communication style, if you communicate a little wrongly, once people will accept and forgive you for it.
Great, sir. There's a question from Ajay Yadav from the Facebook. Sir, how do you deal about the crisis of ramping down the team immediately if the company does not do well? How do you tackle several external groups, example, media or employee groups, and which is seriously impact the mindset of the
Yeah, look, Ajay Yadav, you said, right?
Yes.
Ajay, very good question. And it's, look, I can tell you in my career, I have closed down businesses, I have closed down factories, and I have laid off people. They were the hardest things that I had to do. In every one of those cases, I did not sleep. But I'll tell you what I tried to do. In every single one of those cases, I tried to look the people in the eye and talk to them rationally, explain to them what was happening, treat them with dignity, treat them with grace, and make sure that they had an exit plan that gave them a certain degree of financial security and the ability to find new employment after that. In every single case, yeah, that was the only way I could do it, that I felt, because there are at times for a business, if there's an underperforming factory, an underperforming part of the business, you have to remove it to preserve the rest of the company. You just can't keep carrying loss-making businesses. But then when you let them go and they go to somebody else, make sure you look after the people. Make sure you do it with humanity and with, remember the values I said, with respect. Respect is the most important thing. Respect those people.
Great, sir. The question from Nagendra, you're also seeing the chat box. Which country is going to come out of this crisis sooner based on the strategies implemented now by different countries? Because you have walked around the world. So what is your judgmental factor at the moment, seeing the way the countries and traders are reacting?
Yeah, look, I don't know. Short answer, I don't know. But I have some thoughts, and I believe it's not only the leadership of the country that's important. What is also important is what are the behaviors of people in society and in the corporate world within that environment. And if our people in society take all the time to sit back and just watch movies or stuff like that, then you have an ostrich kind of response, and you should not expect big things, because as a result of this crisis, behaviors are going to change. Make no mistake. Underlying consumer behaviors will change. Some will go back, some will never go back, some will go back partially, but they will change. So the question in front of us, the societies and countries that will benefit are those where everybody acts in harmony, from the leader to corporate businesses to individuals. They are all able to look at this crisis and work together to say, what's my threat response? How do I protect the vulnerable, the weak? And how can I make this an opportunity for us, leveraging the strengths and competencies that we do have? I see this happening in Singapore, for example. Brilliant. But of course, you can say, yeah, very small, self-contained economy. That is very true. It's harder to do in a large economy.
Super, sir. Before I have a number of questions, we'll squeeze in as many questions as possible. Next 10 minutes available with us. In the meanwhile, Tiger, you have a question for him. Would like to put your question to Mr. Nandu?
Yeah, thank you, Group Captain. So Nandu, first of all, amazing set of thoughts and presentations. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have a question. As you think about the responses of leaders, the examples you gave, whether it's in Indonesia or in France or in the US, and as you become bigger, how do you ensure that? And this leads into the talk I'm going to give next week. What are the steps you take to actually make sure that leadership that you just described is similar as you keep growing, is similar over 50, 100 years, is similar as new people come in, and sometimes they come in at very senior levels in the company? How do you ensure that? It's very, very difficult.
Brilliant question, Tiger. And I, in fact, it's one of the things that I teach is culture. So how do you build culture? How do you preserve culture? How do you transmit or an organization culture? What is a culture? I can recommend to the viewers, if you go on YouTube and you Google, on YouTube, you search for the smell of the place. The smell of the place is an 8-minute video by Professor Shumantra, the late Professor Shumantra Ghoshal, who was the founder of the strategy department of the London Business School. And he talks about culture. And what he says is basically a culture is built by 4 things that come together. Something happened there?
No, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Okay. So
Yes,
Kartika,
Shankar.
you need to mute. Yeah.
Kavita Menon, Amita Menon, please mute. Shankar, you please mute everybody except the host, please. Thank you. Please go ahead, sir. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah. So there are four things that come together to. First is, what is the strategy? Is the strategy defined as a box of constraints, or is it defined as a box of stretch possibilities and stretch goals? First is strategy. Yeah. Second is, what are the processes? Are the processes fundamentally based on compliance, or are they based on discipline? Are they backward looking? Are they forward looking? Then there are leadership behaviors. Are they control oriented, or do the leaders exist to support? Then there are team dynamics. How are team dynamics? Are they based on a contractual relationship, or are they trust based? So all 4 of these levers work together to create a culture. And ultimately, the culture determines how well the strategy is executed. So you can have the most brilliant strategy, but the execution of the culture depends on the execution of the strategy depends on the culture. So culture and strategy have to work very close together with human behaviors and processes to reinforce each other. So that you need to make sure that is consistent across geographies, because that's how you ensure at the first level some amount of cultural transmission. The second is through people role modeling and walking the talk, moving from one market to another market, one country to another country. Some of them can be expatriation assignments. Many of them can be short visits to workshops, through communication. But a lot of role modeling is very important. Culture is often built up over decades of consistent behavior. It can be destroyed within 2 years of a mess up in any of these 4 levers.
Super, sir.
I don't know, Tiger, if that helps or answers.
Thank you, sir. The question comes the YouTube viewer, sir. Do the times make the leader, or does the leader shape the times? How can the leader infuse people's lives with a sense of purpose and the meanings, in your opinion?
It's a very big question, and possibly is something that should be addressed in one of our future sessions. They both play off each other. And I believe at the end of the day, what we need is learning leaders. One of the key skills going forward is going to be learning agility. Are you a leader who is able to learn from mistakes? Are you a leader who is able to digest the situations thrown at him, go through it? If you make mistakes, recover and learn from it and grow. That's the quality we need in leaders. Nobody is born perfect. It's very rare once in 2,000 years that you have a Jesus, once in 5,000 years that you have a Krishna. But for most of us, we have to work at, it's a journey of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and never falling into the trap of success. The biggest problem we have as leaders is success. Because the moment you're successful, you fall into this hubris and you start to believe you're infallible. When you start to believe you're infallible, that's the beginning of the end. So what we need is learning leaders.
Point well taken, sir. This we'll keep it as one of our future themes. There's a question from Nadia Sultana. Do you think the present education system generating student resilient to the constant changes? How can students adapt to change? Because you have been teaching in some of the best institutions in the world. What's your views on this, actually?
Yeah, a very good question, Nadia. So I actually teach a class. In fact, next week I'm doing a class for Punjab University where they asked me to talk about teachers as leaders in the new reality. And so how to help build students and so on. And it's a very, very good question. The fact is a lot of our education systems are based on a model of the economy which is 50 years old. Whereas the economy where we are moving to, which is far more collaborative, where information is available at the push of a button on Google, you require a very different kind of behavior. So our models were good models, but they were based on competition. The future is based on collaboration. So one of the biggest shortfalls or gaps I have seen in Indian managers who go abroad, between the ones who are able to adapt and ones who are not able to, those who go abroad or even in India go into an organization and keep that competitive mindset still in their minds, they find it very difficult to actually grow, progress, learn, and develop other people. You have to learn collaborative behavior. So in the education system, I would like to find some way to teach people how to move from competition to collaboration. I would like to teach people how to move from just memory to analytics and problem solving. So the question, apparently in the IIT entrance exam, and guilty, I took the IIT entrance exam 100 years ago, sorry. But in the IIT entrance exam, there is one question that comes every single year, which is, what is the speed of light to X decimal places? Why? Why would you need to ask that? Just Google it. I personally, in my classes, I have open book exams. Yeah, I don't have closed book exams. My class, I'm a minority here, but Harvard, by the way, has shifted completely to open book exams. Open book, you can ask anybody, talk to anybody, but you have tight timelines.
Super, sir. I think large number of professors from a number of institutions are watching the program, and large number of management students are watching. I think one of the fantastic takeaway from this talk. So the next question again from the YouTube viewer is, how to build trust with employees during the turbulent times? How do you do that? Because there's always a mistrust that you are going to be fired, your salary is going to be cut.
Keep your word. Be honest. Okay. I used to have town hall meetings all the time. When I didn't know, I said I didn't know. Don't bullshit them, because you see, the only way you build trust as a leader is if you do what you say. If you're bullshitting, they can smell this a mile away. Okay, you got to be transparent. You have to demonstrate integrity. And when you say something, you have to do it. If you don't know, you say, listen, I don't know. I'm going to find out and I'm going to come back to you. So, people often used to ask and say, listen, what's the salary increase going to be for this year? I said, very honestly, listen, we haven't decided, but here are the parameters we're going to look at. We're going to look at inflation. We're going to look at benchmarking. We're looking at performance. I can give them the theory of how to do it. So you have to be honest, because at the end of the day, that's number one. Number two, very important. You want to build trust, give trust. Give trust and give respect. So number one, Deliver what you promise. Do what you say you will do. Be transparent. Don't bullshit. Number 2, trust your people, respect them, and the trust will come back. Your goal is not to be liked. Your goal is to be respected and trusted as a leader.
Super, sir. Again, a question from the YouTube, sir. How do the executives ensure their employees remain engaged when they are worried about their futures? A lot of uncertainties everywhere.
Yeah, look. It's a hard thing, and particularly in this kind of a situation, where you're not sure about layoffs, it's very hard. If I was a leader, I would go up front and I would take the pain from the top. So I'm advising about a dozen startups all over the world. And to all my startups, what I've basically said to them, listen, don't lay off anybody. Start with salary cuts at the top and work the way down, because people are at home. So don't let them go. Even if you reduce the salary and you bank the salary in stock options, which will eventually fructify, let's try and preserve as many jobs as we can. And if employees see you making that effort, they will respond with trust and respond with commitment. But they have to see you make the effort. If you fire people over Zoom, don't expect any motivation or effort from them.
Thanks. There's a question from Ms. Sharma. What you want to know is, what is the best way to remain sane in the middle of what's unfolding right now?
Look, control the amount of news you consume, because a lot of the news channels these days are politically motivated, and public dialogue in every country all over the world is very polarized. So either pro Mr. So-and-so or anti Mr. So-and-so, there's no meeting in between. So try to stay away from taking positions of that sort, and try to look at what the facts are and make up your own mind and take a balanced position. You don't have to be pro this person or anti this person. You can be pro decisions or supportive of decisions or against decisions that may have been taken that you may not agree with. So we need to get this sense of balance into our perspectives. I personally see some news channels and so on for about 30 minutes a day. That's it. And then I don't watch the news, because the more news you watch, I'll tell you something. There's a very interesting, I don't know how many of you read The Better Angels of Our Nature by Steven Pinker. A beautiful book, about 15 years old now, maybe less, 10 years old now. And he analyzes the history of violence in human society. And what he's able to demonstrate with hard facts, numbers, is that the 20th century, despite the Second World War, was the safest century ever in history. And the amount of violence has been declining in human society even now. So you look at the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, famines, wars, and diseases. By and large, all these 3 horsemen of the apocalypse have been vanquished in current human society. And you ask the average person, is the world getting to be a better place or a worse place? Everybody will tell you it's a worse place. But the fact is, there have never been so few percentage-wise of people below the poverty line as there are today. There have never been so few famines and so few fatalities due to disease and wars as they are today. So overall, the world is getting to be a better place. Yes, there are problems for the environment. Yes, there are problems for global warming. Yes, there are problems for animals and stupid stuff like they did with the elephants in Kerala. There are some nasty people out there. But what's important is that these problems are now receiving attention, and with human ingenuity and with action and some reduction of consumption, I'm sure these problems will be addressed. The world is getting to be a better place. Stay positive. Ultimately, again, at a philosophical level, in life, you find what you look for. So if you look for the devil, you'll find the devil. If you look for goodness, you will find goodness.
Thank
so
you.
you create.
Go ahead, sir. Thank you, sir. I think another 2-3 minutes. I'll squeeze in one last question before I request Mr. Balraman to offer his concluding remarks. how to leverage your board ahead of the turbulent times? Because what is the role of a board member with the management? How is going to be balanced between the boards?
Very, very good question. And, Ram Charan, the late Ram Charan, has written some very nice books on how boards should interact with the operating management. And there are different kinds of boards. There are boards which try to backseat drive and second guess. There are boards which try to manage. There are boards which try to lead boards. So there are different styles. And it's all linked to the stage of development of the business and the stage of development readiness of the operational management. One of the fundamental roles of the board is to make sure that the operational management that is in place is appropriate to the stage of business that the business is at, and that the governance processes that are there to support them are well managed and are appropriate for the stage of business. So when there's a mismatch of this, or when boards, so if I look at Indian boards, there are, it's well documented, there are a lot of board directors who are on so many boards, they can't possibly do justice. And devote time. And that's one problem. And the second, and therefore that not able to add so much value. And the related problem on the other side is that the liability laws have been so strict regarding independent directors on boards that there are many qualified people who do not wish to enter that, particularly for the kind of financial remuneration that is limited at a fairly low kind of level. So in India, there is a huge opportunity to raise our standards of board governance, to raise our understanding of board governance, and to raise the whole, from the government side, the governance mechanisms to incentivize and raise the standards in the boards.
Super, sir. The number of questions have come, but we squeezed in another 5 minutes because of the net connectivity lost out, because we want to stick to that 1.5 hours. All the questions are relevant to leadership style, which you have covered in your talk. Now I request Mr. Balraman for his concluding remarks before you move forward. Over to Mr. Balraman.
Yeah. Well, Nandu, you are leaving us longing for a much longer session or several future sessions. You have answered enormous number of questions, but a number of new questions also arise in our minds. I can understand. See, I have seen that, you see, the main message is that, there is a saying about leading from the front. I have often wondered about this. The group captain is from the armed forces. I have often wondered what happens if the field marshal is in the front and gets shot. The whole army collapses. But when it comes to a corporate crisis, there is no doubt at all that a leader must be visible, must be available, must be there for hand, and he must take it in the chin. And I can see that is exactly what our Prime Minister did, what several chief ministers of different states are doing. And I'm even surprised that governments of India and governments of different states are very visible, very active in a crisis. India has always used crises to their best advantage. It was a crisis of foreign exchange that enabled Dr. Manmohan Singh, under the leadership of P.V. Narasimha Rao, to liberalize the Indian economy. And you can see that the current government is also using the current crisis to liberalize labor laws, to liberalize agricultural product marketing, and so on. So there are, of course, leaders of different countries who make a mess of things in a crisis. And I'm not naming anybody. But Nandu, your message is extremely well taken. And your examples were very apt and very descriptive and very real. And thank you for this. And thank you for doing it for Ponds. And Ponds had itself gone through several crises. What I recall is a crisis when we made a huge Russian shipment. It went to the port, and the drug controller there said the labeling was wrong and he was expecting something that we could not do. I remember Mr. Narayanan taking a very strong stance, saying even the company would have gone under if that consignment was rejected. But the company took a stance saying, no, we will not compromise on our values. So a crisis, Nandu, is the time when you stick to your values. You know who you are and you demonstrate to the world who you are, and the world respects you for that. Thank you for an enormously scintillating session. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I didn't miss a word. And I hope that you can do some more sessions in the future for us. Thank you.
I would love to. Thank you so much for inviting.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Balraman. Thank you for, in fact, facilitating some of the outstanding thought leaders around the world. To start with, nothing could be better than Nandkishore. And as you said, we look forward to him having over again, because the number of comments, I think you must be seeing yourself in the chat box, has been outstanding. We need grateful to you for the same. And Tiger, we are eagerly looking forward to listen to you next week, same time, another interesting talk. Ladies and gentlemen, all the viewers watching this program live on YouTube, Facebook, and thing, very large number, more than 1,500 plus people are watching this program live. And that gives a lot of encouragement. The number keeps going. And if you missed it anyway, not to worry. All these programs are kept on our website for next 1 year. You can log in and watch. I always see a number of people log in, watch subsequently, leisurely over the period, because we want to empower everybody who comes and attend the event live or otherwise. Thank you so much, Mr. Balraman. Thanks to all the viewers. Thank you, Ravi, for joining us. Thank you, Tiger, for joining us from USA. And all the viewers from Ponds Veterans, it's a great honor and pleasure. May I request all the viewers on the chat box to please show your appreciation by show of your indication on your screen. In the meanwhile, all the viewers watching, I think, till we meet again, bye-bye, stay safe and stay healthy. Keep learning, and it's a pleasure to always have you on board with MMA. Thank you so much.
Thank you.